At Super Bowl Sunday party, my mother Deborah and my brother's family hurt my 10-year-old daughter deeply with their words. She had to carry all her gifts and walk home alone. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I took action cold and calculated. My name is Valerie. I got home late that night expecting an empty house because Hailey was supposed to be at my mom's cheering through the final quarter with her cousins, like she'd been counting down for weeks. Instead, the house was dark, only the kitchen light spilling out faintly. The first thing that hit me was her little shoes still lined up by the door exactly where she'd left them that afternoon. Her coat hanging untouched, and the gift bags carefully tied with ribbons she'd spent days perfecting, stacked neatly in the hall tags still attached, not a single one opened. Hailey. I called, my voice quieter than I meant. Here, she answered softly from the kitchen table. She was sitting there in her party dress, shoulders hunched in like she was trying to disappear. Eyes red but dry now. A burned plate in front of her, crumbs scattered like she'd tried to make something special and failed. I froze for a second. You're supposed to be at Grandma's. She looked down. They told me to come home. I sat beside her and pulled her close, held her tight, said nothing. My mind was already moving fast, pieces clicking into place. This wasn't going to end tonight. Did I go too far, or not far enough? Drop a comment below and let me know, then subscribe so you don't miss what happened next. The next morning, Hailey came downstairs with her eyes still puffy from the night before. I was making coffee, trying to act normal. She slid onto a stool at the counter, staring at her hands. I set a mug of hot chocolate in front of her, the kind with extra marshmallows, and sat across from her. You don't have to talk if you don't want to, I said softly. But if you do, I'm listening. She took a small sip, then started talking in that flat, practiced voice kids use when they're trying not to fall apart. The party had been loud from the start. Everyone shouting at the TV, plates piled high with wings and chips, the whole house buzzing because it was Super Bowl Sunday. Hailey had been excited for days. She'd picked out her dress, wrapped the gifts herself, even practiced what she would say when she handed them over. She walked around, offering the bags first to the adults, then to the kids. That's when Tyler snatched one, peeked inside, and announced loud enough for the whole room to hear, "These are ugly. Nobody needs this stuff." A few people chuckled awkwardly. Hailey stood there holding the rest, cheeks burning, but she kept smiling because she didn't want to ruin the vibe. Courtney glanced over from the couch, smirked, and added, "Kid's right. But yeah, it's a little odd." Hailey looked at Ryan for help. He was right there refilling his drink. He just shrugged and said, "Don't take it personally. Come on, the game's back on." She tried to brush it off, stayed quiet in the corner, being as good as she possibly could, hoping someone would notice and invite her to sit with them. She even offered to help clean plates so she'd feel useful. Then my mother pulled her aside near the end of the third quarter. Deborah looked her up and down, voice calm but cutting. "You know the other grandkids fit right in here. You're just different. The house is packed anyway. No more room for you tonight. Better head home before it gets late." Hailey asked if she could stay just until the game ended. "Please. Or at least call me to come pick her up." Mom shook her head. "No need to bother your mother. It's not far." So Hailey gathered the gift bags still unopened and walked out the door. She kept her head down the whole way home, blinking hard so no one driving by would see tears. Told herself big girls don't cry over parties. When she got inside, the house felt too quiet after all that noise. She figured if she made some food, maybe it would still feel like she was part of something. She followed a simple recipe she'd seen online, but she wasn't used to the stove alone. Everything burned. She scraped it onto a plate anyway, and sat at the table waiting, pretending the day hadn't gone completely wrong. By the time she finished telling me, her hot chocolate was cold. She hadn't cried once while talking, just stared at the marshmallows melting. I reached across and squeezed her hand. "None of that was your fault, baby." She nodded, but I could see it hadn't sunk in yet. With Hailey upstairs resting, I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table. The steam rose slowly as I stared out the window at the quiet street. My mind drifted back, piecing together how we'd gotten here. It started when I was young and pregnant. I remember the day I told Mom, her face tightening as she set down her tea. "Valerie, you've disappointed me again," she said flatly. "This is just another burden on the family now." From there it was clear Ryan was the golden child. Birthdays showed it plainly. His gifts were always bigger, wrapped in fancier paper, while mine were practical and small. Mom praised his every achievement in front of relatives. Ryan's going places. But my report cards or small wins got a nod at best. When he wanted help with his first apartment, she wired the money without question. My requests for support met with sighs and reminders of my mistakes. Mom controlled everything with money and the house Grandpa George had set up in that living trust. She'd say it like a mantra: "Family is about people who bring benefits to each other." It was her way of justifying the favoritism Ryan brought success, I brought problems. The trust was meant to give everyone space for gatherings, but it became her tool to keep us in line. Grandpa George was the one exception. He never judged me for the pregnancy or the single motherhood that followed. He'd call randomly asking how I was really doing, slipping me cash for bills without making a fuss. "You're strong, kiddo," he'd say. No lectures, just quiet help. I was the only one who showed up for him consistently. I'd drive him to doctor's appointments, stock his fridge with groceries, sit and talk about old stories over tea. No one else bothered Mom, and Ryan made excuses about busy schedules. Those visits built something real between us, a bond no one else in the family seemed to notice or care about. Once the big house transferred through the trust, things changed fast. Mom and Ryan visited him less and less, their calls becoming short check-ins at best. They treated the place like a done deal, no more effort needed. Grandpa noticed, but he stayed quiet about it then. The coffee had gone cold in my cup. I set it down, the weight of those years settling heavier than ever. That evening, Hailey and I curled up on the couch under a thick blanket, an old animated movie playing low in the background. She needed something light, something that didn't require thinking too hard after the day she'd had. The phone rang at its usual time. Sunday nights, Grandpa George always called right around 8 like clockwork. I reached for it, put it on speaker, and switched to video. His face appeared, glasses sitting low on his nose, the soft lamplight from his apartment behind him. He looked the same as always, tired but alert, ready with his quiet smile. "Hey, you two," he said, voice warm and steady. "Tell me about the big party. Did Hailey get to see the whole game?" Hailey shifted closer to the screen. She hadn't said much since we'd talked that morning, but hearing his voice changed something. She leaned in and started speaking, slow at first, then steadier. She told him everything: how excited she'd been, how she'd wrapped the gifts carefully, how the house had been full of noise and food and cheering. She described walking around, offering the bags, the way people smiled at first, then the shift when certain words were said. Grandpa didn't interrupt. He just watched her, nodding slightly when she paused, giving her space to keep going. When she needed a breath, he asked gentle questions. "Who was there when that happened?" Or, "What did you do next?" Nothing leading, nothing pushing, just enough to let her finish. As she spoke, I saw his expression change in small ways. The corners of his mouth tightened. His eyes narrowed behind the glasses. It wasn't loud anger. It was the deep, quiet kind that comes from disappointment in people you thought you knew. When Hailey finally stopped, the screen stayed silent for several seconds. Then Grandpa spoke, voice low and even. "I set up that trust years ago so there would always be room for family gatherings. A big enough house for holidays, for birthdays, for Sundays like this one, where every grandchild had a place at the table. Not so someone could decide a child doesn't belong." He paused, looking straight at Hailey. "What happened today goes against everything I intended. It ends here." Hailey's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. "I'm calling the lawyer first thing tomorrow," he continued. The papers will be changed. No more room for behavior like this under my roof or with my money. The words landed clear and final. There was no yelling, no threats, just fact. Then his face softened completely toward Hailey. Listen to me, sweetheart. You showed up with kindness and thoughtfulness. You tried to make people happy. That's more than a lot of grown-ups do in a lifetime. I'm proud of you every single day, and nothing anyone says changes that. She gave a small, shaky smile, the first real one I'd seen since the night before. Grandpa glanced at me. Valerie. Yes. Lock the doors good tonight. We said good night soon after. The screen went dark. Hailey rested her head on my shoulder, breathing slower. The movie kept playing, but neither of us was watching anymore. I held her a little tighter, feeling the weight of his words settle over us. Things were moving now, and there was no going back. Early Monday morning, I was in the kitchen pouring cereal when my phone buzzed on the counter. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I answered, bracing myself. Valerie. She started, voice soft and wounded, like I'd already done something unforgivable. You've really upset your grandfather. He's confused now, saying strange things about the house and the trust. He's not himself at all. I stayed quiet, letting her continue. She sighed dramatically. I knew you'd been talking to him more lately. Whatever you've said, it's turned him against us. Ryan and I are just trying to keep the family together, and now this. He's talking about changing everything because of some party misunderstanding. The words twisted in my gut, but I kept my tone neutral. Mom, what exactly did he say? Don't play innocent, she replied, sharpness creeping in. You know what you've done. Filling his head with complaints, making him think we're the bad ones. After all we've sacrificed. This could ruin everything we've built. I felt the heat rise, but I held it back. I haven't filled his head with anything. He heard what happened from Hailey herself. Oh, please, she scoffed. A child's exaggerated story. You're using her to manipulate an old man. If you push this, we'll have to step in properly. Maybe get doctors involved to show he's not thinking clearly. Family looks after its own, Valerie. You should remember that. The threat hung there, clear as day. She wasn't asking. She was warning. The line went dead. She'd hung up first. I stood frozen for a moment, phone still in hand. The kitchen felt colder suddenly. That call wasn't about concern, it was damage control. I dialed Grandpa George's number immediately. It rang through to voicemail. I tried again, same result. A third time, fourth. Nothing. No callback text, no pickup. He always answered, even if just to say he was busy. Worry sharpened into something urgent. By the fifth try, I knew something was wrong. Hailey. I called up the stairs. We need to go check on Grandpa. Get dressed quick. She appeared at the top of the stairs in seconds, pulling on a sweater, questions in her eyes, but no hesitation. We grabbed coats and were out the door fast, the car engine barely warm before I pulled onto the road. The drive to his apartment complex took 20 minutes that felt like hours. My mind ran through possibilities. Had Mom convinced him to ignore me? Or worse, we parked and hurried to his unit. I knocked, no answer. Tried the bell. Still nothing. The neighbor, Mrs. Ellis, was watering plants on her balcony next door. She saw us and waved me over. You're looking for George? She asked, setting down the can. Yes. Have you seen him today? She glanced around, then spoke lower. Very early, before 7, your mom and brother pulled up in Ryan's SUV. They went in, stayed about half an hour. George came out with them carrying a small overnight bag. Didn't look thrilled, kept adjusting his hat like he was stalling, but he got in the car. They said something about taking him home for better care. My chest tightened. Overnight bag. Better care. It wasn't a visit. Did he say anything to you? I asked. She shook her head. Just a quick wave, but he looked resigned. I thanked her, mind already racing ahead. Hailey tugged my sleeve, eyes wide. We headed back to the car without another word. The pieces fit too neatly. Mom's call, the unanswered phone, the sudden care pickup. They weren't waiting to see what Grandpa would do. They were controlling the situation. I gripped the wheel harder as we drove away, the next destination clear. As soon as we pulled away from Grandpa's apartment complex, I turned the car toward Ryan's house, hands tight on the wheel. The streets were still quiet that morning, rush hour not yet started. Hailey sat beside me in the passenger seat this time, twisting the seatbelt strap in her fingers. Grandpa George rode in the back, staring out the window without a word. We arrived too soon. The big house looked the same, manicured lawn, fresh paint, but it felt hostile now. I parked in the driveway, took one steadying breath, and walked up the steps with both of them close behind. I knocked hard. Ryan opened the door, surprise flashing across his face before it hardened. Mom appeared right behind him, arms folded. "What are you doing here?" Ryan asked, voice low. "I came for Grandpa," I said. Mom stepped forward, partially blocking the entry. "He's fine. He's resting upstairs. You can't just barge in making accusations." Grandpa moved past me, then Kane tapping on the porch. "I'm not resting, and I'm leaving." Ryan's eyes widened. "Dad, come on. We talked about this. You need to stay here where we can keep an eye on you." Grandpa stopped. "No, I don't." Mom reached for his arm. "You're upset. Let's all calm down and discuss it inside." I felt the moment stretch, the old pattern trying to pull us back in, polite voices hiding control. Hailey stood small next to me, watching everything. I looked at my daughter, at the way she shrank slightly when Mom's gaze landed on her. Something inside me solidified. If I backed down now, Hailey would grow up believing this was acceptable, being dismissed, controlled, made small by the people supposed to love her. I stepped forward. "Grandpa wants to leave. Let him." Ryan blocked the doorway more fully. "This is dramatic. He's confused after yesterday. We're protecting him." "From what?" I asked. "From making his own decisions." Mom's voice turned pleading. "Valerie, think about the family. You're tearing everything apart over one bad day." Grandpa spoke quietly. "It's more than one day." The standoff lasted seconds that felt endless. I saw the calculation in their eyes: push too hard and risk a scene, but give in and lose control. I made the choice for them. I pulled out my phone, dialed 911, and put it on speaker. 911, what's your emergency?" "I need a welfare check on an elderly family member," I said clearly. "He's been removed from his home this morning, and family members are now preventing him from leaving with us. We need officers to confirm he's okay and acting of his own free will." Mom's face paled. Ryan muttered under his breath. The dispatcher took the address and details efficiently. "Officers are on the way." I ended the call. Silence fell heavy on the porch. Mom recovered, first voice tight. "This is unnecessary. You're embarrassing everyone." "I'm making sure Grandpa is safe," I replied. We waited in that tense quiet. Hailey slipped her hand into mine. Grandpa stood straight despite the cane. The patrol car pulled up within minutes, 2 officers calm and professional. They approached the door, badges visible. "We received a request for a welfare check," one said. "We need to speak directly with the resident George to confirm his status." Ryan tried one last block. "Officers, this is a family matter. He's fine, just tired." The officer repeated politely but firmly, "We still need to speak with him alone for a moment." Mom and Ryan exchanged glances, then stepped aside. The officers spoke with Grandpa briefly on the porch, out of earshot. He answered steadily, gesturing once toward us. When they returned, the lead officer nodded to me. "Mr. George has stated clearly he wishes to leave with you. He's of sound mind and not under duress. We'll document this and be on our way." No lecture, no judgment, just procedure doing its job. Grandpa picked up the small bag he'd brought out earlier. We walked to the car together. He climbed in slowly, Hailey helping with the door. I started the engine. In the rearview mirror, Mom and Ryan stood on the steps watching us drive away. The distance grew, and none of us looked back. On the drive home after picking up Grandpa George, the car felt different, quieter, but in a good way. Hailey held his hand from the back seat and he squeezed it every few minutes like checking she was really there. None of us said much. We all knew what came next. That same afternoon, we met the family lawyer at his office. He'd cleared time when I called from the car. The room was plain, just a big desk and folders, but it felt like the safest place in the world right then. The lawyer spread out the trust documents and explained it simply. Since you're still very much alive, George, you control everything. The house, the accounts, all of it. Beneficiaries can be changed any time with your signature. Grandpa nodded, no hesitation. Then let's change them. He signed where needed, steady hand despite everything. My name and Hailey's went in place of the old ones. The lawyer added restraining orders too, no contact without permission to keep things calm and legal. It was done in under an hour.